And now I am recording.
Very well.
Yes, and we already know who's going first. Number two,
Yes.
number three, and number four.
And
All
without
righty
further
then.
ado, let's begin.
Wait, hold on one
Knights
second.
versus.
Wait. Hold on 1 second, y'all. I am very, very sorry about this.
What
I
happened?
just got off again. Hold on 1 second. Let
The
me
third take's always the best one.
Yeah. All good?
give me 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, hit it.
All right. Knights versus Dinosaurs. Chapter 9. Might makes right. Sir Eric's and Mel's respite had been short-lived. Currently, they were racing through the forest at top speed. Don't look back! Don't look back! Don't look back! Called Eric. They crashed through some thick foliage and tumbled down a steep hill. Eric scrambled to his feet and peered back up the hill. Nothing. They'd escaped. All clear, he said, just as Hector burst out of the bushes and collided with both Eric and Mel. Hector! What the? Eric started to speak. Hector was wild-eyed and twisting back in the direction he'd come. 3 chicken-sized lizards zipped out of the forest and perched on a rock. They all stared at the creatures for a moment. You've got to be kidding, Hector. The chickens bared their teeth and growled. They're rather worse than they look, whispered Hector. A shield appeared, blocked the sun momentarily, and came down on the chickens from behind with a whoop. The Black Knight lifted the dazed chickens off the rock and tossed them far into the woods. Thanks, said Hector. The Black Knight turned back to the knights. Her armor was scratched, dented and muddied. Otherwise, she looked just fine. Any, trouble with terrible lizards out there on your own? Asked Eric.
Okay.
You should ask them, answered the Black Knight, wiping her sword clean. The area was secure for the moment. Eric, Hector, and Magdalena rested in the shade. Mel organized a sack of weapons. Hector opened the book. I've had a chance to peruse most of the book, and it is absolutely fascinating. The illumination work is also quite accurate. I did not know that Merlin was such an artist. I heard that Merlin has enchanted an owl to both write and draw, said Mel. Eric cut in. Enchanted an owl to draw? Oh, please. He enchanted us in this wretched place. I should think he could manage to teach an owl to draw, said Magdalena. At any rate, continued Hector, these terrible lizards are extraordinary in all ways. They're not dragons exactly. They're knights! It was Bors. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, bloody and wild-eyed with excitement. It was...
Okay. Not often that Boar's mind formulated an insight of any kind. He was on fire with the thrill of enlightenment. It's true, he bounded up to the others. They fight us. They fight each other. They fight to conquer, to eat, and, I think, to have fun. They have armor, and their claws and teeth are okay.
As sharp as any blade. Knights, you see. Knights? Said Eric dubiously. Perfect knights, asserted Boris. Whom do they serve? Asked the Black Knight. That's the best part. Boris chuckled. They serve none but themselves. Might makes right. Proof in the pudding. Might makes right? Arthur says might should be used in the service of the greater good, stated Eric. It was Arthur's guiding principle, and Eric agreed with him. But perhaps our king is misguided on that point, said Boris. Mel drew her breath in sharply. How dare you, Hector stood. If you see Arthur, let me know. But in case you haven't noticed, Camelot is not here. Bors stomped up to Hector and leaned into him face to face. We are knights. They are knights. We are pitted
against each other fairly. Together we show them who is stronger. Bors leaned in closer. Might makes right. Thunderous roars pour through the charged air. The group froze. The roars trailed off into dead silence. Where did that come from? Asked Eric. Everywhere, said Mel quietly. They drew their weapons silently. Each knight looked in a different direction. Mel crept behind a boulder.
Okay.
Maybe they're gone, said Hector. Then a tree crashed down beside him, and all was thrown into chaos. Terrible lizards of all shapes and sizes roared and gnashed teeth and chomped at one another. Great tails swung out. Enormous clawed feet pounded the ground. And then they noticed the mice. And that was when things really got started.
Okay. Pictures, pictures, pictures. And then move it. Ooh. Ew. Okay. 71. I'll go ahead. Ow. Oh. Ah. I owned you. Uh-oh. And toss.
Whoa.
Come on, this way. Oh, that way. Go, 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 go. Fellow knights, I suggest that we... Okay.
Three. The knights and Mel ran for their lives. The ferns gave way to a rocky landscape. Hills of stone rose up everywhere. In a wall of solid rock, there was one narrow crevice. In there! Shouted Eric. The knights squeezed through the opening in a single file. Sparks flew as their armor scraped against the rock wall. One spark lit the weapons sack on fire, but Mel immediately smothered it. At the opening of the crevice, the terrible lizard screamed and roared and scraped claws against them. But it was of no use. They were too large to follow. The crevice turned into a very long passage, and the knights shuffled through it. Eventually, it opened onto a crater-like area surrounded on all sides by steep rock walls.
Okay.
The crevice appeared to be the only entrance. In the center of the crater was a peaceful lake, shimmering in the late afternoon sun. We'll be safe here. It's hot. I suggest we have a swim to restore ourselves, said Eric. He glanced at the Black Knight and Mel. Undertunics on. I think we all can agree. The knights did agree. It was the first thing they had agreed on all day. Mel, who was not a strong swimmer, opted to sit by the water's edge and organize the armor and weapons. She laid them out against the rocks. The others stripped to their underthings and waded into the water. It felt really, really good.
Okay.
Chapter 10. A calm, cool swim. The lake was large, but not intimidatingly so. The knights floated and treaded water and bobbed along contentedly. Nell had cleaned the weapons and armor and set them in the sun to dry. She now paged through Merlin's book. The knights, enjoying the quiet ripple of the lake, were silent. This reminds me of a pool near my home, said Hector finally.
Okay.
I go there
sometimes with my falcon. You are a falcon? Asked Bors. So am I. Now a falcon is a predator I can get behind, said Eric, floating on his back. Okay.
Their skill in hunting is quite admirable, said Magdalena. Strong claws, said Boris, could crush a man's hand. Well, no, not mine, of course. But they do have their whimsical side, too. Hector chuckled.
Going.
They're like shiny objects, like ravens. The conversations drifted into a pleasant silence. This is rather nice, said Eric. Dare I say, peaceful. Splash. The lake erupted beneath them as an enormous serpent broke the surface. Its neck is long, its fins massive, its teeth were sharp. Life could certainly be unfair to the knights. The serpent dived for Eric. Its neck swooped up before plunging down, teeth shining. But then it stopped in mid-attack. Boris was holding it by the neck. The creature thrashed frantically. Its tail knocked Hector into the air, splashing him down a few yards away. He took a deep breath and swam underneath towards the belly of the beast. The serpent reached for the back of Boris with its deadly claws.
Okay.
But the Black Knight burst out of the water beside it and grabbed its head. Hector wrapped his arms around one flipper, but couldn't swim. Eric climbed onto its back and pounded away with his fists. The knights fought as one. There was no need for instruction. None swam to safety. The serpent writhed with fury, knocking Bors, Hector, and Eric off. But the Black Knight held tight, her grip like a steel vice, her focus singular and unshakable. The creature rolled, it leaped, it splashed, but nothing could shake the great knight. Mel watched anxiously from the shore. Her mind raced. The weapons were too heavy for aquatic combat. Besides, she'd never be able to throw a sword that far. But, Mel grabbed a rock the size of her head. At that very moment, the Black Knight looked up.
Okay.
Holding the serpent's head in one arm, Magdalena lifted her other hand high. Mel launched the rock with all of her might. It sailed straight to Magdalena's hand, and in one smooth movement, she brought it down on the serpent's head. The creature ceased its struggle instantly and sank below the surface, down to the depths. The knights swabbed in the water, looking at one another. They all nodded, and at my work. They began to swim to the shore. Mel stood by the armor and weapon sack. The sun creeped out from behind a cloud. The armor glistened brightly. And that was when they heard the flapping sound. 4 gigantic flying lizards descended toward the shore in a flash. The knight swam faster, but it was no use. They watched helplessly as the flying creatures snatched the armor from the ground. Shiny object! Sputtered Hector.
Okay. The flying lizard squawked and screeched. More came, each stealing away with the armor, the shield, the sword, the stack of weapons, and fell. She struggled in the grip of the talons as she was carried up and away into the sky. The knight reached shore and watched the flying lizards escape with everything except Merlin's book. No one spoke. Then Bors grabbed a large rock, gripping it in his massive fist until its knuckles were white. He started up the hill. Be he lad or lass, Bors growled. No one steals my squire. Okay.
Chapter 11. Shiny Objects. Mel had fainted. It was perhaps due to the height or maybe the ferocity and grip of the flying lizards. It could have been the sudden realization that all hope was lost. Any one of those things might cause a person to swoon. All combined, fainting could hardly be helped. She came She came to an enormous nest made of hundreds of tree branches. A single flying lizard perched on a thick limb. The nest was so deep that when she stood, she was just able to see over the edge. But doing that was a mistake.
Okay.
On 2 counts. 1, it confirmed that the nest was perched on a very high mountain. And 2, the flying lizard in the nest didn't seem to like her standing up without permission. It screeched, and Mel's ears rang in pain.
Sit your ass down.
She sat back down. Beside her were various pieces of shining armor, swords, and the sack of extra weapons. Next to the sack was an enormous spotted egg. Another flying lizard swooped down, its immense wings generating a strong...
Freeze. Mel flinched. The 2 fierce creatures stared at her. They blinked their beady eyes, but did not attack. Mel was puzzled. She looked at the egg beside her. She looked back at the flying lizard. They looked at the egg, then looked at her. Mel gulped.
Oh,
She was the baby's first meal.
okay. Eric shaded his eyes as he stared up at the top of the mountain. That's the nest. I just saw her head poking out. She's still alive, but we'd better move fast. He turned back at the edge of some woods. Boars, Hector, and Magdalena were pulling down thick, long vines. How's it coming? Boars tightened a knot of vines. He held up an end that had been looped into a lasso. Okay, it'll hold. Let's hope so, Sir Knight, said Eric. Onward and upward. Mel was trying to quiet the part of her brain that was filled with terrified screaming. She must think. She must find a way. This was the sort of thing she did. This was what she was good at. A squire was always thinking, planning, preparing. Okay.
Weapons. There are plenty of weapons, she thought. One of the lizards hopped up suddenly. It landed again, perched close to the sack. Okay, she thought. Perhaps not. No, be brave. She reached slowly for the sword. The lizard snapped its beak and flapped its mighty wings. Mel froze. Then she pulled back her hand and held it out to show that she was unfortunately without a weapon. The knight ascended. The knights ascended. They climbed steadily and in silence, except for the occasional... Eric took the lead. He tossed the lasso end of the vine up and around the jutting rock, secure, and the others climbed up the makeshift rope after him. Then they suddenly repeated the process. Climbing up to the next ledge, Boars reached for a crevice in the rock. He released his grip on the vine. The rock gave, and Boars fell. His descent was short. Magdalena caught him with one powerful arm. She held the dangling Boars until he
managed to grab hold of the vine once more. He looked up at the Black Knight. Nodded. She nodded. They continued the ascent. Mel wavered. She was feeling beaten. The flying lizards were too large, too fast, too attentive. It was hopeless. But I mustn't give up, she thought. I have survived so far in this strange place. I have risked so much already, but... Despair returned. What had she done, exactly? Her days as a squire were over. She almost cried.
Okay.
Almost. But melancholy Postal Waith was made of sterner stuff. She would find a way. She just needed time. At that moment, the egg began to crack. A beak as long as Mel's arms poked through the shell. Mel looked up at the flying lizards. They were focused on her, their black eyes narrowing. Finally, the knights reached the ledge just below the nest. Magdalena coiled the long rope carefully, handed the lasso end to Eric. You throw it in, Sir Eric. Your aim is best. Eric took the vine. Hector made room on the ledge for Bors to pass ahead of him. Sir Knight, you punch with far more accuracy than I. You go first. You are too kind, Sir Knight, said Bors. Eric turned once more to his companions. Everyone know the plan?
Okay. Fight, said Hector. Get swords, said Magdalena. Then stab, said Bors. Splendid, said Eric. The baby lizard broke free of the egg. The larger flying lizard spread its wings and shook them, readjusting its perch. The other opened its beak, revealing its razor-sharp teeth. It shrieked at Mel. There was no time left. She inched her hand toward the nearest sword. Once she got it, she would fight with everything she had. She would not win, but she would die honorably if only a lasso made of thick vine sailed over the side of the nest and landed beside her. Mel understood in an instant and quickly secured the rope to a large branch in the nest. The lizard shifted and screamed, and then 4 knights at the round table climbed onto the edge of the nest. The knights roared and attacked the flying lizards. Okay.
Then flapped into action. In a flash, Mel supplied the knights with swords. The baby lizard screamed out with hunger. Mel knew that the adult lizards would fight without mercy to protect their young. They needed an escape plan fast. She found a vine. Mel loosened the vine and pulled up the slack. She quickly threaded it through some helmets and armored breastplates. She secured the sack next, then attached the shields. She made a second lasso at the end of the vine. Hector fought one of the lizards. He checked on Mel and saw that she was done with the vine. The plan clicked. He grabbed one end of the rope. Mel lassoed her end around the leg of the nearest flying lizard as it flapped its wings and lifted upward. Hector did the same with the other end, attaching it neatly to the leg of a second flying lizard. "The knights!" shouted Mel. "Grab hold!" The others joined Hector and Mel, gripping the vine. Soon enough, the two flying lizards discovered that they were also
attached to the strange rope. They were not amused. They rose higher in the air. "Now!" shouted Eric. The company, holding fast to the rope, leaped over the side of the nest. The flying lizards tried to escape, but they were connected by 20 feet of strong vine. More vexing still, the vine was weighted by armor, a sack of weapons, 4 knights, and their baby food. The beasts flapped in vain, but they could only slow the descent. Down, down, down they glided. As they neared the ground, Eric called out, "1, 2, 3!" The knights let go of the vine and crashed safely into the dirt. The Black Knight rolled and leapt up, sword held high. She sliced through the vine and the armor and sack slid off. The furious creatures, free at last, rose swiftly. They screeched at their enemies, but did not return. The group all rose to their feet, dusting themselves off.
Okay.
Quick thinking, Squire, said Eric. I had frankly forgotten about an exit strategy. If there's one thing a squire knows, my lord, said Mel, it's that armor and weaponry are rather heavy. Hector and Magdalena patted Mel on the back and shoulder. Bors nodded, but said not a word.
Keep going, please.
Chapter 12, Court of the Rex. The company traveled on. During a rest, Hector paged through Merlin's book and made an important discovery about who or what the Tyrannosaurus Rex actually was. He took the opportunity to educate the others. They all examined Merlin's book. Crikey, he's a big fellow, said Eric. Clearly the king. Yes, it would appear to be the most terrible of the lizards. Let's go meet him then, said Bors, gathering up his sword and shield.
Okay. They climbed steadily up an incline. The trees were smaller and more bare. The air was thick. The noises were fewer. The Black Knight stopped. "I think we're getting closer," she said. The others joined her and saw what had stopped her in her tracks. The skeleton of a three-horned beast lay before. Okay.
Then its bones were picked clean. "There's another," said Boris, pointing down at the trail of the remains of one of the long-necked creatures. It's massive. It's apparently no match for the king." Farther along were several more skeletons, more intact, some torn to pieces. The path was strewn with carnage. Hector gulped. "Steady on," said Eric. They moved slowly past the hulking skeletons and carcasses. Insects buzzed and small scavenger lizards rushed past occasionally. Otherwise, all was silent. The bone trail led to the wide, dusty valley. Rock walls climbed up the western edge, and canyons and hills lay to the north. To the east was a tangled mass of dead, gnarled trees and dry brush. The entire place felt like death. Nothing could thrive there.
Okay.
Nothing except the king. The knights entered the arena cautiously. Mel pointed and spoke. "There, on top of that rock hill, that's our cave." It was indeed the cave. Their trek had brought them back to where they had started, but the hill leading to the cave was on the far side of the valley. From the shadows of the valley, an enormous creature emerged and blocked the path to the cave. Its powerful muscles rippled with each step. Its tail swished slowly in the air. Sharp teeth, too long to be contained, protruded from its mouth. "Look at the bones, man! It's got sharp, pointy teeth." Despite its size, it moved fast and carried itself with poise and confidence. "Right," said Boris. "Not so bad." Rocks crumbled underfoot. Two more Tyrannosaurs joined the first. Each was bigger than the last. Finally, the largest and most fearsome Tyrannosaurus Rex of all took its place at the lead. Hector's mouth hung open slightly.
Okay.
"Oh, my Lancelot." "Like we have the entire royal family to deal with," said Eric. "One for each," said Boris. No, we fight together. Mel, go to the side there in the brush. Make your way toward the cave once the battle begins. Stay low and stay quiet." "Sir, yeah, I'm not leaving," said Mel. Eric turned to face her. "We fight together. You said so yourself." Mel stood her ground. "Very well. Now would be a good time for you to come up with another exit strategy. Stay alive until at least you think of something," said Eric with a grin. Tyrannosauruses sniffed the air. Sniffed the air, snorted, twitched their mighty tails. The knights turned to face the terrible lizards. They drew their swords. "Fellow knights," said Eric, "I would like to make a confession. In truth, I did not slay 40 dragons."
Okay. "Furthermore, I have never in my entire life even seen a dragon." There was silence. "Neither have I," stated Bors. "Nor I," said Hector. "Not one," said Magdalena. "But here, in this strange land, we have encountered the fiercest, most terrible creatures imaginable," Eric continued. "And time and again, we valiant knights fought bravely and well. We have matched them in strength and courage, and we have beasted them in strategy, he nodded to Mel. Mel nodded back. I say, this is not a boast. It is the truth. Our deeds have no need for embellishment or exaggeration. Eric paused. I have no illusions about what we now face. These monsters may very well be the end of us. They are certainly worthy opponents. And then the largest T-Rex took a step toward the knights. But we are knights of King Arthur's Round Table. Okay.
This is a glorious day, and I cannot imagine being among a better band of heroes. Shields raised, swords at the ready, the four knights strode towards the terrible lizards. The Tyrannosaurus attacked in a flash. The shields were no match for the force, the initial impact, and the knights were knocked back. Eric swung at the belly of one beast. His sword glanced off the thick hide, but did not pierce it. No one's sword could penetrate the terrible lizard's armor. Boars, mace in hand, sword in the other, attacked in a fierce combination of blows and stabs. But the teeth and jaws were the real danger. The lizards were fast and furious, and their chomps brutal and non-stop. Eric was the first to find himself lifted several feet off the ground. His armor kept the teeth from puncturing his vital organs. But the pressure of the monster's bite was tremendous. He whacked the terrible lizard with it on the snout, and then he whacked again and again.
Okay.
Sir Hector dodged the stomping legs of another Tyrannosaur, pivoted, and brought his sword down on the tail of Eric's captor. The monster spun and loosened its grip enough for Eric to slip out and grab hold of its neck. Its mercifully tiny arms reached and clawed, but to no avail. Eric kicked his leg against the beast's chest and flipped up onto its back, gouged its eyes from behind. Hector and Boar stood back to back, facing off against two opponents. The flurry of swords kept the beasts at bay, but not deterred. They attacked with relentless energy. When Eric was finally tossed from the bucking Tyrannosaur, he landed harshly on the ground and rolled away just in time to avoid being squashed underfoot. The Black Knight, sword in hand, fought back the largest of the Tyrannosaurs. She saw Eric, badly winded with a T-Rex, ready to pounce on him. Eric struggled to his feet. His opponent snorted and slowly opened its jaws, saliva dripping to the ground. Magdalena turned back to the gigantic T-Rex, shoved a sword into its mouth, lodging the weapon in its jaws.
Okay.
As the monster struggled, she leaped onto its tremendous haunch, hoisted herself on its back. She took a deep breath. And then, with an amazing dexterity, she ran straight down the T-Rex's spine, out onto the tail, and leaped off the monster just as the other T-Rex launched itself at Eric. The Black Knight landed between Eric and the beast. In a flash, she lifted a discarded shield and blocked the creature. Eric got to his feet and threw a mace to the Black Knight.
Okay. Magdalena caught it and dealt the T-Rex a mighty blow. Mel watched in horror from the tree. The knights fought bravely, braver than any before, surely. But the odds were against them. The Tyrannosaurs did not stop. They would not stop. She pulled a sack of extra weapons toward her. She might need to supply new weapons at a moment's notice. Notice! Okay.
Her hand was gripping the bit of the burned sack that had caught fire in the crevice back by the lake. Fire! Mel dug into her pouch for her flint and striking stone. After several frantic moments, a spark caught a dead tree. He blew the flame, and it rose and licked its way toward the wood. Mel waved the branch like a torch. Running along the edge of the arena, spread the blaze. It wound through the dry brush on the to the hill where the cave was located. "The night!" she yelled. Those who could look up. Unfortunately, unfortunately, so did one of the terrible lizards. It roared in her direction, and then it charged. But Cerberus launched himself into the air and brought his sword down on the monster's foot. It snarled and turned, teeth bared. Boars bared his own teeth and roared back. He swung one powerful fist and in a precisely placed uppercut. The punch connected.
The terrible lizard's eyes crossed. It wobbled on its injured foot, then toppled over with a tremendous thud. Boars snorted and turned, fists ready. "Go!" he yelled at Mel. She ran, spreading the fire, which burned higher and higher. Hector and Eric swung their swords at their foes, knocking them back with each powerful blow. Soon, Hector turned and ran toward the wall of flame. He bolted through a small opening in the blaze to join Mel. Eric came next, crashing through the fire. He stopped, dropped, and rolled on the ground to extinguish some stray flames. Eventually, Boars leapt through the fire to join the others at the foot of the hill. 3 of the Tyrannosaurs approached the line slowly, the inferno confusing and angering them. They roared. They chomped the fire, then recoiled in pain. The barrier was working. "Where is the Black Knight?" said Mel, throwing her torch into the blaze. The knights peered through the flames and smoke. "There!" shouted Boars. The Black Knight faced off with the Tyrant King. They slowly circled each other. The king swished its tail and snarled. It snapped at her, jumped away, landed, then attacked, bringing down her mace. The handle broke in two. Magdalena tossed it aside.
Okay. There were no other weapons within reach. She ran for the fire. "Quickly!" called Eric. The Black Knight stumbled and fell. The king was on her in an instant, snapping her up in its jaws, her armor creaking and groaning. He pushed at its upper jaw, but the powerful beast clamped down even harder. That was when she got mad. The Black Knight grabbed a single tooth and pulled and pulled and tore it right out of the king's gum. It opened its mouth in a roar of pain. The Black Knight took hold of the king's tongue, yanked it out, and swung it to the ground. Perhaps the king of the terrible lizards had never felt such a sensation. For a moment, it didn't appear to know what to do, which was enough time for the Black Knight to race for the fire line again. She jumped straight through and landed safely on the other side. The struck its enormous head with the flame, then pulled back with a roar. The terrible lizard panicked.
Okay. Smoke filled the clearing. As long as the fire around them raged, they were trapped. Ha ha! Eric chortled. "I'll bet they wish they were dragons now, eh?" Boar slapped Eric heartily on the back. "Good line, Sir Eric. Very witty indeed." And with that, the company made a hasty climb up the hill to the cave. Okay.
Chapter 13. The End of the Adventure. With the fire keeping the Tyrannosaurus Rex family at bay far below, the knights and Mel entered the cave and strode down the passageway to the book chamber. "Hear us, Merlin," said Eric in his most booming voice. "We have bested the tyrant king of the terrible lizards, and here request our reward. Return us to England." A strong wind blew through the dark cave, then stopped suddenly. Eric strode back to the entrance, He looked out.
Okay.
Ah,
Vermin. Didn't work. A tremendous roar from somewhere below confirmed this for the rest of the company. Perhaps Merlin's book could help? Mel suggested. Hector placed the book on the rock at the center of the chamber. He paged to the end. Oh, there appears to be a note. I shall read it aloud for you. Hector cleared his throat, and then cleared his throat again. Oh, just read it already, Hector, said Bors. Dear Knights, I have detailed the aspects of the terrible lizards in these pages for your quiet perusal. However, it is likely you have ignored this volume entirely and ventured out to sea for yourselves. I hope that worked out for you. And if there are any of you left, and you still have heads, let alone eyes to read these words, I do hope you will reflect on your experience.
Okay.
Terrible and magnificent creatures have indeed walked this earth. Perhaps they still do or will again one day. I hope that you now have a proper amount of respect for these fierce beasts, and that this knowledge may help curb your more boastful assertions of knightly bravery and exploits. And now my enchanted owl is tired and requests that I dictate no more for him to inscribe. Fare thee well or farewell, brave knights, whichever is the case. Best, Merlin. The knights looked at one another. Has this, Eric began slowly and evenly, has this,
Okay. Entire adventure just been one of Merlin's teachable moments? Yes, I believe so, said Hector. Furthermore, it appears that we could have simply sat here and read the book. There was a long silence. Well, where would the fun be in that? Said Magdalena. More silence. Until a chuckle came from Bors. Soon Eric joined in, and Hector and Mel. Magdalena smiled a rare smile, and then, even more extraordinary, she laughed. The whole cave echoed with laughter. Okay.
and then 4 torches blazed. The knights walked to the entrance and looked out. Merry old England, said Eric. Indeed it was. There were fine, trim oaks. The woods were orderly and proper. A squirrel hurried by. It wasn't even a large squirrel. The knights descended the hill. They found their horses just as they had left them, grazing peacefully in the shade. The knights went to their steeds. One moment, said Sir Bors, placing a hand gently on Mel's shoulder. Mel, he said. It was the first time he had ever used her name. You've acted with cunning and bravery. Your contribution to this quest is undeniable. Mel glowed. Warmth radiated through her. She stood a little taller.
Okay.
But
It was one small word. Yet her face looked as though Sir Bors had thrust a sword through her. I am afraid that I cannot have a girl as a squire. It just isn't done. He held out his hand. Mel knew what it meant. Knew there was no argument to be made. She handed Bors the sack of weapons that she had so dutifully carried. He took it and secured it to the weapons horse. Then he mounted his own horse and set off, pulling the reins of the weapons horse behind him. Eric and Hector each gazed at Mel silently, but then followed Bors on the path to Camelot. Mel stood there, alone, small, lost, until a shadow fell over her. She turned. The Black Knight was beside her, high on her midnight steed.
Okay.
come with me if you like, Be whoever you wish to be. She lowered a hand. A good squire is a good squire. Mel smiled. She reached up, and the Black Knight easily lifted her onto the back of the horse. They rode on without another word. That evening, the four knights returned to Camelot and the court of King Arthur. They waited until all were assembled in the great hall, especially Merlin. This entrance had to count. The massive oak doors opened with a bit of tasteful fanfare. The knights of the round table turned in unison. Sir Eric, Sir Bors, Sir Hector, and the Black Knight strode in, still wearing their battle-scarred armor. A hush fell over the hall. Merlin sat up straight, a small, inscrutable smile under his long beard. Approach, said Arthur. Sir Eric strode before the king and queen and bowed. Sire, we have returned from battling the terrible lizards.
Okay, lizards. They were indeed fearsome, more so than any dragon in existence. But Eric looked back at his fellow knights. Together, we beasted them all. Step forward, all of you, said Arthur. Hector and Bors approached and bowed. The Black Knight remained in the shadows, helmet and visor on as usual. Arthur waited. All of you, I said. Arthur's voice was quiet, but that meant that he was really, really serious. The Black Knight came forward, and for the first time in Camelot, she removed her helmet. Magdalena bowed. Okay.
There were gasps. A few forks dropped out of the hands of stunned knights. Why not spit out in surprise? Arthur cleared his throat. Guinevere tilted her head slightly. Merlin merely nibbled on some lettuce. He didn't seem particularly surprised. Eric broke the silence. Your Majesty, I know this is highly irregular, but I must tell you, and all here at court, that before you stands the bravest, the mightiest knight I have ever known. Sorry, Lancelot, Eric added quickly. Lancelot waved it off. Little things didn't bother him. Your name? Asked Arthur. Magdalena, sire, daughter of Robert, the blacksmith. Arthur considered this for a moment. Very well, Black Knight. Everyone exhaled. Join us for the feast, brave knights. Tell your tale. Teach the minstrels some new songs, said Arthur, for all our sakes. Gladly, sire, said Eric. But first, he glanced at Magdalena and grinned. Magdalena tossed something into the air.
And Eric caught it without looking. My queen, we have brought a trophy for you and our king. Eric held up an enormous tooth, a souvenir from the great Tyrannosaurus Rex. Guinevere took the tooth. Merlin's eyebrows rose with interest. Well done, brave knights, said Guinevere. A most terrible lizard indeed.
Keep going.
Eric bowed low. The formalities completed, the hall once again filled with chatter, music, and excitement. Bors and Hector held various knights spellbound. Lancelot engaged in his first conversation with the Black Knight, who in truth he had long admired. Even Mel was surrounded by the other squires in the antechamber of the great hall. Minstrels were summoned, and they began to compose new and exciting songs. Sir Eric, however, took his leave quietly and walked alone to the great door of the hall. His tunic was slightly scratchy. He was very tired. The adventure was over, and his bed awaited.
Okay.
Chapter 14, Band of Siblings. Eric slept deeply and soundly and free of dreams. He awoke to a breeze wafting into his bedchamber. A few songbirds twittered pleasantly nearby. He yawned. Bed. Then the clatter of falling powder rang through the outer room. After a timid knock, the door opened a crack. Derek, the squire, poked his long nose into the chamber. Sir Eric, he whispered. What is it, Derek? It had better be eggs and bacon.
Okay. Not quite, my lord. Come in, squire. The squire entered, holding a scroll of parchment. This arrived early this morning, Sir Eric, but I didn't want to wake you. Hand it here. Derek did so and stood at attention. Eric read silently. He rolled the parchment up. He sighed. It seems, he said, getting out of bed, that King Arthur has been so inspired by our magnificent adventure that he has proposed a new quest to all of the knights of the Round Table. He brushed Derek aside, grabbed some clothes, and swept through the door. Derek scurried after him. He wants us to search for the Holy Grail. Eric put on his chainmail shirt and tunic. Okay.
What on earth is the Holy Grail? You may be wondering, my dear squire. Well, I'll tell you. He continued in a louder, slightly annoyed voice. It is a legendary item. Lost for centuries, quite possibly not even in existence. He fastened his belt and stepped into his boots. No clues, no leads. All of the earth is covered. He threw open the front door. It is a search that is sure to be time-consuming and exceedingly dangerous. There, in the courtyard, awaited Sir Hector, Sir Boris, and the Black Knight, all suited and ready, magnificent in their clawed and bitten armor, and sitting on their finest horses. Mel was there, too, dressed smartly in black, riding a white horse behind the Black Knight. She held a new banner that showed a field of red with a silhouette of a terrible lizard at the center, surrounded by 4 swords. The same symbol decorated the shield of each knight.
Okay.
What an absolutely splendid idea. Sir Eric smiled.
The
end.
end.
Woo! Yeah.
All right.
Yay.
And that is Knights versus Dinosaurs, the conclusion.
That's a fun story. It was a really good story.
Really, really was.
That's okay, Zeely. I enjoyed the background.
That was cool.
It is cool. It's really neat.
Sweet.
There you go. Wait, when you show it at an angle, show it at the
I
angle.
guess
So,
so.
yeah,
That you
right
have
there.
to show it at an angle. Cool.
Yeah,
Okay. I learned
yeah.
something new today.
Actually, yeah, the sigil is kind of badass.
Yeah, right?
It really is. Yeah, I do like that. I really do.
Yeah.
This is a great adventure. I mean, look, when Sir Bors got chomped by that Tyrannosaur in the very first like what, the 3rd chapter or whatever, and like, got crunched. I was like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a really good action book.
Yeah,
Very
it definitely is. Yeah, and they went, and what I loved is when they finally just said, you know what, we are not going to go fighting and disagreeing about anything anymore. Let's just work together, because if we work together, we can conquer so much more than fighting and working separately. And that's exactly what they did. And I love that when they said, listen, I haven't slain anything. And then everybody else admitted, neither have I, not a one. No.
There's absolutely a parable of teamwork and and effort, no matter what you bring into the the party, that I love in this.
Exactly. I'm going to
together everyone